Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our British Curriculum Forum event celebrating language education. We're here to share creative and innovative approaches to teaching languages across the 4 nations of the UK. My name is Arlene Holmes Henderson, and I am Associate Professor of Classics and Ancient History at Durham University and a member of the British Curriculum Forum Steering Group. I'm delighted that so many of you have chosen to join us this afternoon. We've got a fantastic mix of people. We've got university students, undergraduate and postgraduate. We've got educators in schools. We've got academics from universities. We've also got representatives from government and from subject associations. So I'm confident that we're going to have a fantastic conversation. It's my pleasure at this point to pass over to my co-chair of this event, Sharon, who will introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you today. My name is Sharon Jones. I'm chair of the British Curriculum Forum with BERA. I'm also a lecturer in education studies with modern languages, and I taught languages in high school and post-primary school for about 20 years. So I'm delighted to be here with you at this event, and thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Sharon. I'd also like our 4 panelists to give a short introduction so you can see who that you're going to be hearing from this afternoon. They are the real attraction of this event. So let's start with Fiona.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon to you all from wet and miserable Glasgow. I'm Fiona Mackay. I'm the Director of Scotland's National Centre for Languages, which is based at the University of Strathclyde. And it's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to share a little bit of the work that we've been doing with you across the UK.
Thanks, Fiona. And now we'll move on to Ian.
Thank you, Arlene. Bonjour, guten tag, dia div, August buenos dias. Hello, everybody. I'm Ian Collin, and I am director of the Northern Ireland Centre for Information on Language Teaching, abbreviated to NICELT, based at Queen's University Belfast and funded by the Department of Education, Northern Ireland. I'm also a senior lecturer in modern languages education at Queen's and have responsibility for our PGC programme in French, German, Irish, and Spanish.
Thanks, Ian. Let's move on to Lucy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lucy Jenkins, and I'm the project director of the Modern Foreign Languages Mentoring Project, based at Cardiff University, but a collaboration with nearly all of the universities across Wales. And I'm really looking forward to sharing more about the Welsh context with you today.
Thanks, Lucy. And last, but certainly not least, Lisa.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. My name's Lisa Panford. I am a senior lecturer and the course lead for the Modern Foreign Languages PGC Secondary, and I'm based at St Mary's University in Twickenham. It's great to be here.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about how this afternoon's session is structured. I know many of you will have seen the programme already, but each panellist is going to have 10 minutes in which to share their perspective on creative and innovative approaches to languages in their national context. But I would encourage you to be putting any questions or comments or reflections you have for the panelists into the chat function whenever you think of them. Don't wait until we've heard from all 4 panelists before you put those questions in the chat. Just put them in the chat as we go through. And it may be that the panelists choose to respond to you by typing the reply in the chat, or it may be that they choose to answer your question live at the end of the presentations. So that's how we're going to run with the presentations. The final thing I want to say is you saw in the introductory slides that there is a hashtag for today's event. It is hashtag BERA_language. And we would love it if you would tweet about what you're hearing as part of this event. If you want to tag BERA, their Twitter handle is @BERA News. and a lot of the panelists are putting Twitter handles in their presentations, either their personal Twitter handles or the Twitter handles of the projects that they represent. So feel free to be tweeting and tagging the people who you're hearing from this afternoon, and that will allow other people who perhaps weren't able to be here to find out a little bit about what you've heard. So without further ado, I'm going to pass straight on to Fiona to give us the perspective from Scotland.
Can everyone see that okay? Good. So it's my great pleasure to be with you this afternoon and to be sharing some of the innovative and creative approaches that we've been putting in place in Scotland. And I want to start to explain, it's a mixed audience, so I want to explain a little bit about the Scottish context. Our political and policy landscape in Scotland, as you will know, education is fully devolved, and it is Scottish Government and our local authorities, our 32 local authorities who have governance of our schools. And at the moment, we have just finished the implementation period of the 1+2 languages policy. So in Scotland, when a child goes to primary school aged 5, they can expect to be learning an additional language. We do not use the word foreign, an additional language from primary 5, which will continue that same language right through to the end of the broad general education, which is at the end of S3, so roughly about age 15. And they will learn a second additional language no later than primary 5, so around about the age of 9. So the first additional language should go right the way through primary and into secondary schools, because our primary and secondary schools work in associated school groups and clusters. Huge focus on our education system. Of course, the biggest driving focus of our education system is social justice, narrowing the attainment gap. So that's kind of like what our schools, a little brief idea of what our schools look like. Of course, we have our geography of our country. We have some very remote and rural island communities. Some of our schools, our smallest primary school has, I think, 12 people in it, 12 learners in it. And we also have large conurbations with, that are very multilingual, multicultural populations. So we have quite a diverse landscape when it comes to how we serve our schools. And just to, again, put a little bit of context around about the position of languages at the moment, the 1+2 policy just reached the end of the implementation period. I would be lying if I didn't say it was slightly patchy in terms of how well it's been fully embodied, or embedded rather, in the curriculum. However, we're in a much better place than we were 10 years ago. And we have about 80% of our schools now offering the full entitlement to 1+2 languages across the curriculum. What has been really interesting has been the growth, particularly in primary schools, of other languages, lesser taught languages, particularly sitting in that L3 space in the curriculum. So we've seen a huge growth in Scots, in BSL, in Arabic, Mandarin too, and some other languages that might have been considered lesser taught in the past. Of course, the pandemic has created many challenges, and I think languages in particular have been more challenged than other curricular areas. There's been a focus, understandably, on literacy, numeracy and health and well-being, and that in some schools was taken literally, and they focused quite literally on literacy, numeracy and health and well-being to the exclusion of other curricular areas rather than trying to weave it through. There have been travel restrictions, and that has meant that our Chinese exchange teachers, for example, that we would normally bring from China to work with us, and language assistants coming into the country, have not been able to come. And that has had a significant detrimental effect on the language learning, I would say. There's been a bit of a loss of momentum for 1+2. Certainly the pandemic and the end of the funded implementation period have coincided, and I think it would be fair to say that that's creating a bit of a loss of momentum. And most worryingly, we're seeing a decline now in the senior phase in uptake in German, and actually in French now, and even this year in Spanish. So that is really a concern. However, I think that we have to focus on the positive, and the most recent local authority survey finding shows that huge increase in primary provision across the pandemic years. So it hasn't just been as damaging as we thought that it might have been. So what have we been doing? How have we innovated? Innovation is the response to challenge. It is the necessity is the mother of innovation, and we've had to reimagine how we work, as everyone has done over the last 3 years. The Language Leadership Programme is one of our big flagship programmes at CILT, and it's really came from a need way back in the early implementation part of the policy period of the policy. It was really about thinking about we needed people in the local authorities. We needed to help our local authorities develop capacity to lead language learning. And so several iterations of this programme ensued. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and we could no longer offer it as we used to offer it. So we took a year off in order to revisit, reimagine and redesign the programme. And we have now, as a result, moved to a fully online course. It used to be just a summer course, a summer school that was in face-to-face, and then an optional, more optional work to do throughout the year. So we've changed that. We now have professional recognition from the General Teaching Council fully embedded across the programme. So people who successfully complete the programme have professional recognition for the leadership of languages registered with them with the GTC, and that's there for 5 years. So the format has been adapted from that summer school to 2 full core days of professional learning that again are online in the summer, just at the beginning of before the summer holidays. And then throughout the year, there's a choice of professional learning opportunities that the participants can choose as a sort of, they can choose their own pathway through it. These professional learning opportunities are actually offered by a range of different partners. So we offer some of them, but our local authority partners offer others, and they've opened up professional learning opportunities that would just have been for their own teachers. They have opened them up nationally so that people on the Language Leadership Programme can, I almost think of it almost like a baccalaureate. They plot a pathway through the programme, but their learning is all joined together by journal submissions, which are at master's level, the reflective journal that ties everything up. And that is supported by a little army of critical friends and mentors that we support. And the critical friends are people who have already gone through the programme previously. So there is a pathway that comes once you've done the leadership programme, a pathway that can take you into leadership of languages and advocacy for languages in your own teaching context. But also then there's further opportunity to be involved at a national level as a critical friend to other people in the programme. Another innovation that we've put in place have been online classes. We never saw ourselves as, we are all educators, we have a teaching background, but we don't see the position of CILT as teaching languages. Rather, we support the pedagogy and approaches to teaching languages. However, over the pandemic, we realised that there was a need to bring the world to the children and young people because they were in danger of losing out. And this has now become part of the offer, but we do it working with other organisations. So we have been able to put in place a programme of Arabic for primary and secondary schools with teachers who we support and who are teaching online. using a course and the materials that we developed with them. So that has been going really well. The really interesting thing, I think, in the primary school is that it's not just about plonking children in front of a screen, that there is a loan box goes out full of artifacts, and the teacher facilitates that learning, both involving the online teacher, asynchronous materials that have been given to them, and also the artifacts in the classroom, and it makes a really rich, culturally rich and interesting learning experience. Similarly, we've been doing the same with Chinese, online teachers teaching, but alongside the primary teacher and the secondary teacher in the classroom facilitating the learning. And again, a loan box goes out with artifacts for them to explore and take the learning a bit further. We've done a similar thing with Polish, and that actually led to a really interesting project called Polish Through Art, which was a sort of spin-off of the 10 Steps to Polish. The schools that had been involved with that then went on to do some more work in Polish and looking at themselves, getting the learners to look at themselves as multilingual, emerging multilingual beings. That was a very interesting project, and you can see it on the SILT website. There's a wonderful exhibition of children's artwork that they did from that. Similarly, we're teaching online BSL as well, and the VET programme, again, born out of necessity. I said earlier we couldn't get the Chinese exchange teachers and language assistants into the country that they normally would do. So we partnered with a university in China who teach Chinese as a foreign language, and their master's students are now teaching into our primary schools using a framework and a programme that we have developed and supported by our professional learning. And they're doing that really in a way that is very exciting and is opening up language learning to people who would never have had the chance to learn Mandarin in the past. So we're hopeful that what we're doing is keeping up that diversity of language learning that is so crucial and so important. Similarly, we've been helping schools develop really creative contexts for language learning, and this is in the hope that it will help schools improve their uptake into the senior phase by creating that motivation in the earlier years of language learning, so that language learning remains fresh and innovative and exciting and relevant to the learners. Now, we do this by usually working with other partners, not just SILT and not just the schools. So Espacios Increíbles, for example, is an interdisciplinary project where we brought teachers together to develop materials in Spanish, but also working with their colleagues in technical education and working with our colleagues at the University of Strathclyde in the Department of Architecture. And the young people are expected to develop technical drawings to describe their amazing space, to develop an amazing space and to be able to discuss why is this amazing space, what's so important about it, what's so important about their building, and then they work with the finalists. It's a competition now, so the finalists then get to come to the university and work with the Department of Architecture. Le Foot et la Francophonie is a similar context. It's a similar idea where we brought teachers of PE and French together to develop materials, and their young people work doing football education and PE and learning French at the same time and looking at the Francophonie. And again, we bring them to the university at the end to have a sort of competition of football drills and French. So it works really well. Santé Cause, again, is very similar. It's looking at health and well-being, and it's linking schools, again, teachers working with university counterparts. It's the University of Dundee that partnered with us with that. And again, the teachers work with their partners to develop materials and then teach these interdisciplinary projects. Mother tongue, other tongue has been a huge success, and one of the things that we changed in light of the pandemic, but that I think that we will be keeping from now on, is we changed it from a written poetry competition to a spoken word competition, and now the children and young people submit little videos of them talking, saying their poem, reading their poem out loud. This has been really important because speaking, we feel, is one of the areas that has lost out on, one of the skill area that has lost out most during the pandemic. And as mentioned, they're Polish through art. Again, this wonderful project where we worked with artists, and we brought together artists and linguists to help teachers see their children, because it was in primary schools, their children as emerging multilinguals, not just as monolingual English speakers in the main part, for whom English had to be another language had to be something that was learned. We wanted them to see the skills and the language skills that are already there in their classroom, whether it was in their heritage speakers of other languages, or whether it was in children who came from an English speaking or Scots or BSL or Doric speaking background. We wanted them to be able to see themselves more as these multilingual learners. So there are my contact details. It's just a real quick tour of the kind of work that we've been doing. And if you want to find out anything more, please go to, I should have put the Twitter handle there as well, it's Scottish Silt. And if you want to look at our website, it's www.silt.org.uk. So please have a look at what we do, and I'd be happy to take any questions at all.
That's great. Thank you so much, Fiona. You'll see there's already a question in the chat for you. So it's up to you whether you want to type the answer to that or wait and answer it live at the end. But already there's a lot of appreciation for what you've talked about. The Polish Multilingual Art Project is great and really inspiring, as was so much of what you shared with us. So thank you tremendously. It's now time to move to Northern Ireland and to hear from Ian.
Great, thank you very mught, Arlene. We're now going to jump over the Irish Sea to beautiful Belfast, and it's my pleasure to present to you this afternoon NYSILT's innovative and creative approaches to language learning. So, NYSILT, what exactly is it, first of all, before we launch into some of our innovative and creative approaches? We were founded in 1995 and we're part of the wider SILT network across the UK, and we've just heard from my colleague Fiona in Scotland. We're funded by the curriculum team from the Department of Education in Northern Ireland, and we're housed within the School of Social Sciences, Education and Social Work at Queen's University Belfast. It's important to say that our funding is actually very small, and that is reflective of the level of importance I feel that is attached to modern languages currently on the Northern Ireland curriculum. So I'm very candid about this and very willing to say that we receive £75,000 of funding per year from the Northern Ireland government to deliver all of the events that we deliver and to pay the salaries of the staff members. We're very grateful to Queen's University Belfast for providing us with the space through which to operate the project, and very thankful to them for waiving all of the overheads like heating and lighting. Our aim is to support and promote languages in schools in Northern Ireland, and we are a very small team of 3, but we do have a steering group of 5 school principals and vice principals, a representative from our local awarding body, CCEA, and a couple of academics as well from within the university. I work at NYSILT 1 day a week as the director, and the other 4 days I am a senior lecturer in modern languages education on our PGCE programme. I'll not tell you what my favourite day of the week is, but I think you can guess. And I'm very ably supported by Michelle Deveni, who is our wonderful project coordinator and a graduate of French and German, and Jane Duff, who is our graduate intern and has her PhD Viva next week. So between us, we are the team behind NYSILT. We're also the Northern Ireland Network for the Association for Language Learning. Education in Northern Ireland is very similar to that in England, Wales and Scotland, but there are some notable differences. First of all, our children start primary education aged 4, which is one of the youngest school starting ages in the world. And we have a continuation of a selective system of post-primary or second level education. So at this point in the autumn, our 10 and 11-year-olds in Northern Ireland are all currently sitting a suite of English and maths tests to decide their future, whether they will go to one of our 66 grammar schools or whether they will go to one of our 126 non-grammar or secondary schools. And that leads to huge division within the school system here. We've very few private schools, we've only less than 5, and the majority of them are part private. There's a significant role played by each of the churches in education governance here, and there is a stark division along ethno-religious lines, with 94% of children attending either an all-Protestant or an all-Catholic school. Just 6% of our children attend an integrated school where Catholics and Protestants learn side by side. And those divisions from the Northern Ireland Troubles do remain within our school system, despite various attempts through shared education to improve things. In terms of the key stages of the curriculum, I'll not read those out for you, but key stage 3 is ages 11 to 14. That's our year groups 8 to 10. So if you're listening from England, that would be your years 7 to 9. And that is the only period during which learning a language other than English or Irish in Irish medium schools is compulsory, the shortest period of language learning anywhere in the continent of Europe. And we do not have any statutory provision for primary school languages, which makes us very different to Scotland, England and Wales with great regret. The curriculum is organised around a big picture. I appreciate this is very difficult for you to see, but it essentially is a skills-based curriculum, and it was introduced in 2007. So I think that there would be a great deal of appetite for the curriculum to be revised, and hopefully in any future revision, primary languages will become to the fore. Like the other UK nations, language learning is in decline. On your screen there, you can see the blue for French starting back in 1996, the yellow for Spanish, the grey for Irish, and the dark orange colour for German. So when we talk about the decline of language learning in Northern Ireland, we really do talk about the decline in French, because numbers have really plummeted there from 14,000 in 96 down to just over 3,500 in 2022. So in terms of our innovative approaches, you're not going to be bamboozled by any of this, but these are things that we feel do work. And with our very tight budget, we have to make sure we're doing low prep and high impact activities. European Day of Languages is a great way to encourage language learning, as is our NICELT Summer Challenge booklet. We introduced this at the end of June last year, and it was a generic booklet across French, German, Irish and Spanish, so it wasn't language specific, but it contained 15 different challenges. The booklet is readily available online, so if you're an audience from out with Northern Ireland, just do a quick Google search for the NICELT Summer Language Challenge, and you can find this booklet that you can use with your pupils. And we weren't sure how this was going to go, but the teachers and the pupils in years 8 and 9, so ages 11 and 12, absolutely loved this, and it was one of our most successful events. And here you can see some of our pupils from schools across Northern Ireland and their teachers receiving their certificates for whether they achieved a gold, a bronze or a silver award. So it didn't take a lot of effort on our part, but it did lead to great language learning going on over the summer period here in Northern Ireland. Our Ambassadors project has grown out of an RE funded project that unites final year undergraduate students of French, Irish and Spanish with year 10 pupils in non-selective schools. Remember, year 10 in Northern Ireland is year 9 in England, just before they make their GCSE choices. And the aim of this project is to encourage on-the-fence pupils to opt into taking GCSE languages. And 2 classes in each school that is selected benefit from a whole class presentation given by an undergraduate student from one of the 3 languages. And then they are mentored through 4 mentoring sessions that take place during term 1. We're working this year with 6 different schools across Northern Ireland. Here you can see an example of one of the mentoring sessions where we look at what GCSE Irish involves in a nutshell. Here you can see a resource for talking about your year abroad in Spanish. And here you can see a resource talking about the future me, trying to get young people to imagine how languages could play an important part in their future self. And through this work that we did last year, and we're continuing this year, we can see that this has had a positive impact. Now, this is not an in-depth, high-level evaluation of the project, but we simply asked the pupils who took part, 154 of them, from the start of the project, do they enjoy learning languages? Do they think knowing languages will help them get a good job? And do they want to do a language for GCSE? And the success here can be seen in the strongly agree and the agree. Those indicators have increased the whole way across, and that has been really, really positive. We also operate FrancoFest and HispanoFest. Now, these were not our ideas. It was a teacher in England had been doing these for quite some time, but they have been a great success. So these are simulated trade fairs, and within a school context, you get all of your year 10 pupils, so year 9 in England, to come up in groups of 4 with either marketing of a tourist destination in France or Spain, or a new product such as mobile phone cover or cupcakes for a French or Spanish market. And the winning team in each school then gets to come down to the university to take part in a simulated trade fair. And again, if you do a quick Google search for FrancoFest Belfast, you'll see some video material of this excellent event. And we know that this has had a really positive outworking for uptake in languages in our schools. Another simple activity is our German spelling bee and our Irish spelling bee competition. So spelling bees are very familiar. I'll not dwell too long on these, but they have been very, very helpful as well in generating enthusiasm for languages. An outworking of the pandemic has been that we are now able to deliver a lot of our webinars like this one online, and we offer 2 languages for employability webinars for school children, again in the year 10 group, so year 9 in England, who are making their choices around GCSE. We do a Teams live event and we bring people in from industry, we bring undergraduate students in from languages, and we talk about the value of learning a language in your career, and teachers do rely quite heavily on those as part of their promotional material for choosing a language for GCSE. Our professional learning webinars take place in January each year, and in January of this year, we are delighted to have Joe Dale and Krista Hazel and Esmeralda Salgado, who many of you will know, coming to speak to our teachers about research that underpins practice in the classroom. And those will take place each Monday evening in January. And finally, just before I close, we are launching a brand new Languages Week that we've never had before in Northern Ireland, that's going to run from Monday the 30th of January to Friday the 3rd of February. There's going to be lots of activities going on there in that week, and it does mirror the work that our colleagues in CILT are doing in Scotland whenever they host their Languages Week. Lots of activities going on in schools, and we're encouraging all of our heads of department in the 192 post-primary schools that we work with to make Languages Week a key feature of their school calendar. February time is also the time when GCSE and A-level choices are being made, so that's why we chose that particular window to have this. There'll also be some activities happening at the university around this, and lots of information going out on social media. So that's everything from me. It was a whistle-stop tour of everything that we've been doing. I would encourage you to sign up to join NISILT's mailing list. You can do that at the link there on your screen. And you're also able to contact us by email, Facebook and Twitter, and also on our website. So thank you all very much for that, and happy to answer any questions too along the way.
Thank you so much, Ian. I hope you're seeing these applause hands coming up on the screen now. That was absolutely wonderful. Without further ado, let's move straight on now to Wales and hear from Lucy.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Arlene. I'm going to try and share my screen now. Bear with me 2 seconds. There we go. Is that okay?
Looks perfect.
Perfect, wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much for inviting me to talk about the context here in Wales today. Hopefully I can give you a high-level overview of the situation in Wales, certainly from my perspective as project director of the MFL mentoring project. Just to give a little insight into what that actually means, the MFL Mentoring Project is a project funded by the Welsh Government and has been since 2015, and it's been all about encouraging young people to take an international language at GCSE level. And I'll go on to explain why we might need this extra push, this extra encouragement. And our particular methodology for achieving that goal, achieving that aim, is using mentoring. And we boast a partnership of 8 universities from across Wales, plus support from universities beyond that contact us and want to support our learners here in Wales. So we've had a partnership with Oxford University this year, and I partner with now 103 of the secondary schools across Wales. So we've got massive reach and incredible partnership really from all of those that we collaborate with. So just a little insight into our mentoring project, but I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the context and policy in Wales, just because I'm sure not everybody is aware of the specificities of the context here in Wales. I'm going to talk a little bit about our curriculum because we are in a period of change, which I think brings us great hope and great opportunity, is the way that I'm certainly looking at it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the creativity and innovation that we have tried to develop through MFL mentoring in particular. So I'm going to look at mentoring, the multilingual resources we're creating, and our marketing and communications campaign. In short, the situation does not look positive. And this is despite incredible hard work that is being put in on the ground by our teachers. So I just want to recognise that whilst these numbers are really rather dispiriting, and as you'll see, we have a decline of 33% of entries at GCSE level between 2015 and 2021, meaning that only 4,625 learners sat a GCSE in an international language, which represents only 14.4% of all learners at that stage. And I have good reason to suspect that those numbers are going to drop a little bit further this year. So for the 2022 examinations, I want to note that this is not because there is lack of effort on the part of our amazing school teachers, practitioners in our schools in Wales. I want to actually congratulate and flag really the amazing work that is taking place. There is something happening and it is not their fault. They're doing their very best to combat it, and I think we need to recognise that. So no, it's not looking good at GCSE, and there's lots of reasons for that. Unsurprisingly, as a result, it is not looking good at A level either. So A level for us is aged between 16 and 18. Now, as you'll note from my previous slide, if we've only got 4,625 learners taking a GCSE, the number naturally will fall as we go into A level. What we are looking at is a real tragedy, in my opinion, that only 387 learners sat an A level in an international language in 2021. So those numbers are really, really tiny. Again, this is, in my view, and according to the research that we've conducted within the project, and please do look at our website, this is a natural consequence of this attrition that we've seen at GCSE level. And there is a direct correlation. I'm not going to labour too much over this. We know there's a decline. We know that it's a very sorry situation. But things are being done to try and solve the situation. We have a wonderful policy called Global Futures, which was initially launched in 2015 to try and combat this decline. We are now in our third iteration, actually, of Global Futures, and it will run 2022 to 2025. And you can see here our renewed aims for Global Futures for this period. Hopefully the presentation will be circulated afterwards and you'll be able to read in more detail. You'll note that the presentation is in Cymraeg and in English, so you'll have to excuse the busyness of the slides. They are a little overwhelming to look at, I know. Global Futures is a really important policy and we are funded under Global Futures. And again, I'd encourage you to go away and have a little look because that is a fundamental policy for us here in Wales. Another really important policy for us is Cymraeg 2050. Now, this is the central policy for the promotion of the Welsh language here in Wales. We have a real advantage. We have a real exciting opportunity to bring together Cymraeg, international languages, and English to the benefit of all of the speakers of all of those languages, in my view. Cymraeg 2050 focuses on that promotion of Welsh language. and the increase in the number of speakers of Welsh language. Here you've got the 3 key aims, and what you'll see, and I think this is a really interesting one when we think about the promotion of international languages, is creating favourable conditions, both in terms of infrastructure and context. And I think we ought to dwell a little bit on that when we think about how we have approached the promotion of international languages across our nations. I'm going to swiftly move on to the curriculum, and I dare say I'm not doing any of this justice because I'm flying through, but do bear with me. I'm very happy to have discussions offline about all of this. The curriculum for Wales is undergoing absolute reformation, and it's a really exciting time for us. The new curriculum is underpinned by 4 purposes, and you can see these 4 purposes here. To create learners that are ambitious and capable, that are enterprising creative contributors, that are ethical, informed citizens of Wales and the world, and that are healthy, confident individuals. In my view, these all feed in naturally to one another, but the one that I'm going to particularly focus on here is this ethical, informed citizens of Wales and the world. And there's that clear commitment to Wales, to Welsh language, but also to the globalised world that we are a part of, and that our learners will be even more a part of. Globalisation is not going to slow down. It is only going to speed up. And I think we need to be ready and celebrate that globalisation. The curriculum is going to be, well, it's not going to be split, it's one holistic curriculum, but it is divided into 6 areas of learning and experience. These are the expressive arts, health and well-being, humanities, languages, literacy and communication, mathematics and numeracy, and science and technology. I'd like to draw your attention to the AOLE here, called Languages, Literacy and Communication, the LLC, as I'll refer to it. Now, our LLC, and I refer to it as our LLC because I feel a certain connection with this area of learning and experience, is underpinned by a series of what matters statements. It's not cryptic in any way. It is what matters to us in that within that AOLE. Do note that the AOLE brings together English, Welsh, and international languages into a single area, suggesting that we need to work across languages in a holistic way, as well as across the curriculum, as one of the overriding underpinning goals of the curriculum as a whole. Our LLC has these 4 what matters statements: that languages connect us, that understanding languages is key to understanding the world around us, expressing ourselves through languages is key to communication, and that literature fires imagination and inspires creativity. So this is what is propelling us forward for international languages as part of the curriculum for Wales. I'm going to talk very quickly then about the innovation that I see us undertaking here in Wales, particularly from the viewpoint of MFL mentoring, because that is my area of expertise. So I want to just acknowledge the mentoring project and what we're bringing to the context here in terms of encouraging this embedded, holistic, integrated approach to international language learning alongside English and alongside Cymraeg to bring all of us up together. Our mentoring project, as I said, is working across 103 of the approximately 180 secondary schools in Wales. We work across 8 partner universities, and mentors go into our partner secondary schools to conduct 6 sessions with their group of mentees. Most importantly, and it's a really vital part of the puzzle, those learners that engage in the mentoring programme are those that are unsure or disinclined towards languages. You will note that the numbers that I have stated right at the beginning of this, or fronted right at the beginning of this presentation, do not leave us room for error. We are in an emergency situation. So we are in no way preaching to the converted. We are looking to create conversion. We are looking to create change, okay? So it's really about working with those learners that are not seeing the value. That sustained relationship, grows connectivity, shows relevance, and creates an aspiration for our young people to see themselves in the future as linguists. It has a ripple effect within the school, within the classroom, within the teaching community. Everybody starts to understand the value of languages. And more importantly than anything else, for me, our mentoring project is about all and every language. Our mentors do not go in and teach French, German, Spanish. They go in and talk about languages as a concept, as a way of life, as a way in which we move through the world and connect, disconnect, enjoy, love, hate, and move through life. I believe that this is one of the ways that we can motivate young people, every young person, to see a connection between themselves and languages. Our second innovation is that we're creating a series of multilingual resources. These take an object-based learning approach, which essentially means that we take one object and we look at it from 300 different angles. So it's very interdisciplinary and really challenges this concept that the everyday is every day. So we take, for example, a pair of shoes and we look at it through a whole variety of different prisms. And what we actually ask our learners to do is to do this in their everyday lives. Look at the ordinary and make it extraordinary, because that's where you start to see that everyday impact coming through. Again, looking across languages and really working on this notion that we should be encouraging our learners to be curiosity driven, motivated by their curiosity, not stifled by it. And last but not least, this is our most recent stream of work, which is a marketing and communications campaign, which is all about profiling languages, celebrating languages, inspiring people to identify with languages and to see them everywhere. So the key thing for me when I think about our marketing and comms campaign, this includes social media, and it includes materials that we will be providing to schools digitally and physically, is that it is strategic. We have taken the time to strategize and think about the user. Who are we targeting? How are we targeting? How regularly are we targeting them? So on and so forth. It is targeted to meet learners where they're at. It is targeted to meet teachers where they're at. And it's targeted to bring people together. And above all else, we must recognize that there are huge misconceptions about the value of language learning out there in our world, way beyond our learners in our schools. And we have to start flooding those inspiring, positive messages that we all share as a community. So I think it's really, really important that we have a coherent set of positive, celebratory voices for languages. Part of this will be a blog extravaganza. We'll call it an extravaganza through the MFL Mentoring website, where we will be profiling the work of teachers across Wales. So I do hope that that's something that you'll go and visit to, again, take inspiration from the incredible practice that is happening across Wales and across the UK as a whole. I will leave it there. Here are my contact details. As I say, I feel like I've not done any of it justice because I've gone at breakneck speed, but I'm happy to take any and all questions. And of course, feel free to contact me on any of the methods I've outlined there. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you so much, Lucy. That was absolutely wonderful. And now we'll move on to our final panel presentation, and that is Lisa Panford, representing England.
Thank you so much. I was just furiously taking notes, actually. It's so inspired. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. So huge thanks to Arlene and Sharon and colleagues at BERA for the opportunity to contribute to this discussion today. Unfortunately, I'm not even the best placed person on this panel, thanks to Ian, to discuss the language trends survey. But we're super lucky, Ian was the author, we're super lucky to have this annual report to give us an overview of the state of play of languages education in England. I've pulled out a few headlines on this slide that you'll likely be aware of, and which begin to set the scene in English schools. And to echo Lucy Jenkins' comments earlier, not to be read as a reflection of our wonderful and committed teacher workforce and their Herculean efforts, but rather broader structures at play. you may not yet have accessed a brilliant discussion about the implication of these findings for the future of language learning between the author, Kim Bauer, Oliver Hopwood, Vicky Go, and Helen Myers. But I'd really urge you to do so if you haven't. And I've linked that YouTube discussion here on this slide, which will circulate afterwards, with particular reference, I would say, to Kim Bauer's brilliant intervention about the purpose of language learning in the context of these findings and current policy direction. Language learning in our schools is, of course, impacted by the challenges facing the broader educational community, including those relating to teacher recruitment and retention, and the very serious issue of teacher diversity or lack thereof, most recently reported in the NFER 2022 report. Although in relation to the recruitment, at least, there is some welcome news for our MFL community, with the inclusion of languages on the shortage list and the eligibility for language trainees to now receive bursaries for their training. So that's the incoming cohort 2023-24. Within this context, there are a number of policy decisions and developments that are shaping the direction of language learning and teaching. Colleagues on the call will know about the Ofsted Curriculum Research Review, which sets out to determine what constitutes effective teaching of languages. You will know about the of NCELP, the National Centre for Excellence in Language Pedagogy, which provides scheme of work for teaching languages through the 3 pillars of phonics, vocabulary, and grammar, and the initial teacher training core content framework, which prescribes a list of readings and theories that trainees must engage with in order to become expert practitioners, and signals also wider shifting discourses which relate to ideological concepts around what constitutes high quality teacher education. There's undoubtedly an ideological shift in terms of the proposed direction of language learning, and one that's underpinned by the body of research of cognitive science and is characterized by the centering of grammar and vocabulary. For helpful responses and discussions around this direction, I've linked on the slide, I've linked some, I found helpful reading on this slide. The shift and the unprecedented prescriptive nature of curriculum and pedagogical direction has provoked what Caroline Conlon refers to in her article linked here as a period of divergence within the MFL community, where many colleagues are questioning the purpose and direction of our discipline. In the context of the significant changes to the GCSE exams, which are on the horizon, a time when awarding bodies will be working on their new specs, publishers will be working on their resources, teachers on their schemes of work. And in light of very recent news of the government's tender for a Centre of Excellence for Languages, I think it's really timely and I believe of paramount importance to look very closely at ways that we can centre innovation and creativity in order to ensure that our pupils and frankly their teachers engagement with our subject is supported, and to realise the purpose of study of languages, which are articulated really helpfully through the statutory guidance, and that's presented in the national curriculum. And here it is, our purpose of study for Key Stage 3. For us, Ian, that's year 7 to 9. Hardly a scientific approach, I've just highlighted my favourite bits. I would suggest that learning languages might be so much more enriching, engaging, and contemporarily relevant if teachers were afforded space to explore the rich socio-cultural, historical, political dimensions of our subject through their schemes of work. Centering the topic of race in this discussion to redress what I understand has been until now a colourblind approach to research, pedagogy, and policy in the context of modern foreign languages in our context. I feel that through the exploration of the colonial underpinnings and legacies of our target language countries, through the interrogation of the canon of literary texts presented in our A-levels, through disrupting the stereotypical and tokenistic representation of the global South, which continue to be commonplace in textbooks and serve to perpetuate really harmful misconceptions about the world. I am aware that work is being done by Oxford University Press and Pearson, maybe others in this regard. And also through engaging in a critical questioning of the positioning of French, German and Spanish in relation to other languages with and by our pupils. By beginning to engage in this work, we might begin to remove some of the barriers that prevent pupils and teachers who look like me to see themselves within our subject, and moreover, to begin to realise the transformative and liberatory potential that's articulated herein as the purpose of study for all of our pupils. One innovative and creative space which is dedicated to explore the issues of race and racism and how it shows up within our subject is the Association for Language Learning Decolonising Secondary, MFL, Special Interest Groups, quite a mouthful. This group was founded by me and my colleague Melina Irvin, who's a teacher based in Bristol, over a year ago now. It's such an exciting space. We work collaboratively across sectors with professionals who have committed to collectively mobilise advancements in this area. Our members hail from all over the UK, with one member zooming in from Germany. They are practitioners in schools, universities, in educational publishing, and in our awarding bodies. The link to our webpage is on this slide, and you can read about our journey in the BERA article that I've linked here, and also an article in Languages Today magazine. I've also included on this slide an article that I wrote on race and racism in secondary MFL, and a link to a recent article in the Independent newspaper by Osama Wright, which I think will be of interest to colleagues who are concerned with issues of social justice in our subject. Colleagues in the room may be interested in joining us to explore the issues and advance anti-racist decolonising practice in our subject. And if you are, please do email the email at the bottom of the screen. Through our group, we champion the fantastic work that is being done by teachers in schools to create spaces for their students, spaces that are intentionally inclusive, celebratory, and identity affirming. Here are some examples shared by our member school, Ellen Wilkinson School for Girls, school based in West London, and this is all up on our webpage also. On the left, this is a reflection of how they disrupted the centering of whiteness in their school's European Day of Languages by using the day as an opportunity to celebrate the multilingual and multicultural reality of contemporary Europe and to raise the profile of their department across the school, of course. Ellen Wilkinson School for Girls have also shared resources that they have developed which aim to promote empowering and progressive narratives from the global south. SIG members have forged partnerships to explore the creative, inspiring and inclusive potential of translation for their pupils and have engaged in initiatives around creative translation, those being led by Stephen Spender Trust in collaboration with Queen's College Translation Exchange and Shadow Heroes. There's a QR code at the bottom of this slide, which I hope works, and should link to their programme of activities for this opportunity for language teachers and their learners, and they create a real sense of excitement and buzz around translation, and their work is designed to capitalise on the many language and cultural skills that our learners bring to our multilingual and multicultural classrooms. We're especially proud of our partnership with the Institute of Languages, Cultures and Societies, and their work in promoting the value and importance of the integrated study of languages, cultures and societies has very real implications for our context in England. A link to their website and mission statement is included on this slide, including an explanation of their recent name change from, and I noticed there was a comment in the chat that spoke to this a little. They've recently changed their name from the Institute of Modern Languages Research, and they speak in their mission statement to how they came to dispense with the artificial distinction between modern and community languages in order to better reflect what many university departments are doing in terms of an expanded range of languages from across the globe. They are a real hub of expertise and innovation. And because they're so active in convening lectures and workshops and conferences, their website is a real treasure trove, I think, and of real interest to practitioners across all sectors. Colleagues may be interested to learn that in collaboration with Pearson, our group have developed a series of resources that aim to illuminate the hidden stories of marginalised people and languages through, marginalised people and culture through language. And these are aimed at Key Stage 3 and 4 secondary language learners. Our resources are can be freely accessed. The link's on this slide, but you just put into Google permission to speak series at Pearson and it will come up. All of the resources include some context and reflective tasks in English, as well as language tasks in French, German and Spanish. It's a growing bank of work, but I've selected a couple of examples that look a bit fuzzy here, apologies, just to give you a sense of what they look like. So the first resource at the top aims to theorise language and race in an accessible way to Key Stage 3 and 4 pupils. So it highlights some of the complexities and nuances around having conversations about race in French, German, Spanish language and the respective target language countries. Melina Irvin's piece, the second piece here, is an exploration of the concepts of cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation in the context of Mexico with some activities in Spanish. And Ro Henry Grant, our Germanist and SIG member, explores the Islamic influence on German culture and language. That was published in time for Ramadan this year. Here's a sneak peek of the forthcoming resource due to go live on the Pearson website any day now. This aims to look at the connections between climate justice, race and language learning with our readers. And we ask our readers to think about how they can use their languages skills to advocate for climate justice and contribute to dialogue between people for more peaceful and more sustainable future. Beyond our group activities, and with thanks to Stephen Fawkes, who's the trustee at the Association for Language Learning, I bring news of the Home Heritage Community Languages Advisory Group. This is a focal point for strategic and practical issues relating to home heritage and community languages in mainstream and supplementary education and other settings. This group is hosted by the British Council and the Association for Language Learning, and they are convening a webinar this evening, tonight, on motivation. They are accepting bookings, I'm checking my time, until now. 5:05 is when it closes. And information is on the Association for Language Learning website. So please do book them for that. Lots of opposing voices and demands on our subject currently, with the new GCSE on the horizon, and in light of the points I've raised earlier, I'm super interested to hear from you about how this might relate to you, or not so much, in your context. And colleagues are welcome to be in touch and join the special interest group. My Twitter's here. The email to register your interest for the SIG group is on this slide as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. That is really inspiring. All of the presentations have been fantastic this afternoon. Inspiring work and initiatives, very positive news, but also some challenges for us as educators too. So thank you so much for that. I've just been looking in the chat at, there are a few questions that have been, it's been quite busy, which is great. There's been a lot of discussion going on. Jim Anderson asked a question around community languages, and Fiona has been answering that there as well. A question around language awareness. Tanya asked a question about learners with special educational needs. Would anybody like to speak to that question about special pupils with and learners with special educational needs? coming out of lessons. So not really, sort of a question around inclusion and additional needs. Anyone like to come in there? Is perhaps being touched on in the chat. There was also, if you do want to come in on that, just feel free to come in. This was a question from Dilith to Ian, actually a question around French. Fiona, I'm going to come back to you in a wee minute. Ian, do you want to say anything about why you think the decline is so visible in French?
So obviously with geographical factors, Northern Ireland is different to other parts of the UK. We did have a primary languages pilot, which operated from 2007 through to 2015. And that primary languages pilot focused on 2 languages, mainly Irish and Spanish. In the later stages of the pilot, there was funding for Polish. However, French and German were both not part of that primary languages pilot. And there was a great deal of disappointment in 2015 whenever the primary languages pilot was pulled. But in some regards, it wasn't a bad thing that it was pulled here, because it wasn't a model that was fit for purpose. And colleagues who I work with in Northern Ireland would have very clear ideas around what primary languages should look like moving forward. And we can certainly learn from the mistakes that have been made in other jurisdictions. The primary languages pilot, we do miss it, of course, but the fact that French wasn't included there was a major problem. Aside from that as well, I think that as young people have been learning languages in our schools, one of the big issues that I see is that a number of our non-selective schools, so non-grammar, are going down to only offering one language. And that one language tends to be Spanish, because rightly or wrongly, there is a perception that Spanish is easier for children. Now, as a Spanish speaker myself, to a certain degree, I would say that Spanish is more accessible in the early stages of language learning, so the phoneme and grapheme mapping are very, very clear. But of course, when we get on into the intermediate to advanced stages and the subjunctive comes in, it does have equal challenges to what we see in French and German. So that's really what the unique situation in Northern Ireland with regards to French, and also then the decision to make languages not compulsory at GCSE back in 2004 has had an obvious detrimental impact there as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Ian. We can see how language policy really does affect practice and what's happening on the ground. So thanks for that. A question from Lucy also came up in the chat for Lucy around the shift in wording, which is really interesting in Wales, moving from modern foreign languages to international languages. It's an interesting term, international, bearing in mind Lisa's really challenging discussion about languages there as well. Any thoughts, Lucy, on that and change in wording in Wales?
I think I'm a really big supporter of the change. I think we have to have change. I don't think modern as a foreign, certainly they're not fit for purpose anymore. It doesn't recognise, it doesn't include, it actively excludes a lot of the different languages and a lot of the different learners and communities that want to identify with our particular community. So for me, it's important for inclusive purposes to bring people together, to offer better connectivity. But like I said in my comment, I also think there's an issue here that we need to differentiate between times, the time of decline, of misery, of all of these challenges that we've experienced with languages, and we need to move forward into a new era where we celebrate and we really we offer those voices of opportunity, so on and so forth. So I think it's an important marker of change, and terminology, vocabulary is absolutely a quintessentially important part of offering a possibility of change. I'm not saying that it's going to solve all the problems, but I am saying that it offers a possibility to make change, and I think our words need to reflect that.
Thanks, Lucy. I think I did hear the word extravaganza at one point. Did you use that word? It was a fabulous word. We couldn't get anything more positive, so thank you for that. I want to bring Fiona back because her hand was up. Fiona, sorry, I didn't come back to you a little bit earlier.
It was a matter of inclusion that somebody had put in the chat.
Yeah.
And all I can speak for, obviously, is the Scottish context. All our schools are comprehensive, and therefore the responsibility is on the practitioners and teachers to make sure that the barriers are removed, the barriers are at least are lessened, and that all children and young people have equal access to the curriculum. We consider it an entitlement. Language learning, languages are an entitlement within the curriculum. So we do still see some learners being extracted from languages because they're perceived to be too difficult for them. But that is really not the norm, and it would very much be challenged by HMI if they came in to inspect a school and they saw someone not being given their entitlement. They would want very, very sound evidence as to why that was being allowed. And we have seen actually in the survey in local authorities that actually schools that are additional support needs schools doing some marvelous work on language education, even with children and young people who are non-verbal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, one of the things I love about this event is, yes, we can learn from each other's mistakes, but we can also learn from each other's successes as well. And I find this a really enriching time this afternoon. So thanks to you all. I have a question, and it's a question around motivation. You are clearly professionals with a really passionate, you're really passionate champions of language education, let's face it. And you invest a lot of in it personally and professionally. What are your thoughts around motivation, both on a personal level, but also around language education generally? And I'm gonna put that to Lisa first, if she doesn't mind.
I do not mind. Thank you, Sharon. I try and be transparent about the fact that my work and my approaches are informed by my personal and professional experiences. I'm unashamedly motivated by my conviction that what we need is a broader debate around the counteracting of what I find to be racially discriminatory practices that are found within our subject and in schools more broadly. I've previously written about my personal interactions with our subject, not to speak for all Black teachers and learners of MFL, but rather to show how by theorizing race, it helps me work it out and make sense of my experience. 15 years as a teacher of languages, the past 3 as a teacher educator, and the majority of my life as a language learner. To tell me that our curricula and our educational spaces are not racially neutral spaces. I love our subject. To my life, it has brought new ways of thinking about the world, my position within it. I've made connections, developed meaningful relationships, had wide-ranging international experiences. I just want that for all of our young people. And so that's my personal and professional motivation. I would highlight the importance of culture, literary texts, creativity to motivate and engage learners, but also teachers. And in my context, which is London, I find lots of inspiration and motivation when part of privilege of my role is I get to observe practitioners and trainee teachers. And, when I see purposeful and intentional spaces being created to celebrate and affirm the identities of pupils through language learning, I get super inspired and hopeful. And yeah, when I see teachers who are free to use their creativity to really exploit what I think is the wide-ranging potential of our subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I'm hopeful that's another brilliant word to take away with us. Lucy, I'm gonna go around my screen to you if you have anything to add around motivation personally and also in learners that you work with.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about motivation. I think you can probably tell that personally I have a real commitment and passion for languages and what they mean and what they bring for our young people. So I think I've just used 3 words really. I think in terms of motivating a young person, it has to be relevant, it has to matter to them, and it absolutely sings to what Lisa's just said about ensuring that the space speaks to that particular learner, every learner. It speaks to this notion of learners with additional learning learning needs being excluded from those spaces. Those spaces have to represent all learners, and it is our job, our role to do that. That is where the intrinsic motivation comes in. That is where they become lifelong learners of languages, and that's where you get the commitment. So relevance is everything. I think aspiration is so important. Seeing people that you can aspire to be, seeing aspiration as part of your journey, and actually seeing it as something to move towards in a hopeful way, not in a limiting way. I think sometimes aspiration can feel super big and it can feel unimaginable and impossible, but I want it to be a dream that is achievable. So we have to put goals there that motivate learners to move forward towards an aspiration, to be somebody that learns languages, that loves languages. And finally, I think there's a massive well-being component in terms of how we motivate our learners to be inspired by language learning. For me, languages are so important because they improve my well-being on an everyday basis. So they matter to me every day. If we can actually get learners to see that connectivity between themselves as human beings, themselves as social beings, and themselves as language learners, we stand a chance of really integrating and embedding a more just, a more equal, a more a fairer world, which is ultimately what we're all striving towards.
Thank you, Lucy. That's fantastic. I'm going to move to Ian now. I see him nodding.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said here, Sharon. I think that motivation is a very personal thing to children and to individual children. And as teachers, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to motivate a child to enjoy languages. You can create the conditions in which the child himself can feel motivated. But linked to this intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, a lot of what we're doing in Northern Ireland through NISALT is extrinsic motivation. It's trying to create those conditions in which children will feel motivated. And our teachers, thankfully, have full professional autonomy in their classrooms to decide how to teach and to decide what will set the weather in their classroom to make their children feel motivated. There's no directive from our local government here around pedagogy or learning. And that's very different to what I see going on in England at the moment. And I'm glad I'm on this side of the Irish Sea, to be perfectly honest with you, because changes are afoot in England and they're untested. They're based on quite a narrow body of research. And it'll be interesting to see how language learning goes in England and whether the new GCSE that has been crafted is going to lead to better intrinsic motivation, and whether the pedagogy that is being promoted as being the best pedagogy for language learning actually does lead to greater uptake in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. And that's an important question to take away with us. And last but not least, I'm going to go to Fiona in Scotland.
Well, I think motivate when you're a young person, you're not just learning a language, you're learning everything.
Mm.
And I think if we reduce language learning to only allowing youngsters to say what they already know, then that's not going to be particularly motivating. So I would always advocate that we teach things through teaching the language, and that youngsters get to explore concepts and explore ideas that go way beyond the contents of your pencil case.
Absolutely, yeah. That word curiosity, I think curiosity-driven learning, that's fantastic. Thank you all. I am delighted that you, as passionate language educators over a good number of years, with lots of experience in different contexts, were contributing today. I'm going to hand over to Arlie now.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really enjoyed that question and answer. That was really wide-ranging. We've just had a comment in the chat that says that we all need to pull together to improve the uptake of learning languages, and that's something that I am 100% behind as a classicist who teaches Latin and Ancient Greek. And I think we can end on quite a positive note, which is Latin is now being taught in lots more state schools than ever before. There's lots of funding available for teaching Latin, both in primary and in secondary schools, from charities and from the government in England. And so more collaboration between diversely situated language communities, I think, can only be positive for learners in classrooms. So it's my job to say a few thank yous. Firstly, I'd like to thank the BERA events team for putting this event on this afternoon. I would like to thank UCML, the University Council of Modern Languages, who sponsored 30 free places for teachers. We're very grateful to them for doing that. But most of all, I would like to thank the attendees and the panelists for making this event so special, so enjoyable, and so useful. So watch out for the next British Curriculum Forum event coming soon. It will be on the BERA website, and we would love to see you at that. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.